Mostly, though, it was the fall that John Coffey came to E-Block, sentenced to death for the rape murder of the Dedrick twins. There was 4 or 5 guards on the block each shift, but a lot of them were floaters. Dean Stanton, Harry Turtlewilger, and Brutus Howell. The men called him brutal, but it was a joke. He wouldn't hurt a fly unless he had to, in spite of his size. Let's go down and take a... It's been a long time, but... All are dead now, and so was Percy Wetmore, who really was brutal. Not to mention stupid. Percy had no business on E-Block, where an ugly nature was useless and sometimes dangerous, but he was related to the governor by marriage, and so he stayed. It was Percy Wetmore who ushered Coffey onto the block, with the supposedly traditional cry of dead man walking here. It was still as hot as the hinges of hell, October or not. The door of the exercise yard opened, letting in a flood of brilliant light, and the biggest man I've ever seen, except some of those basketball fellows they have on TV down in the resource room of this home for wayward droolers after I've finished up in. He wore chains on his arms and across his water barrel of a chest. He wore leg irons on his ankles, and shuffled a chain up between them that sounded like cascading coins as it ran along the lime-colored corridor between the cells. Percy Wetmore was on one side of him, skinny little Harry Turtlewilger on the other, and they looked like children walking along with a captured bear. Even Brutus Howell looked like a kid next to Coffey, and Brutal was over 6 feet tall and broad as well, a football tackle who had gone on to play at LSU until he flunked out and came home to the Ridges. John Coffey was black like most of the men who came to stay for a while at E-Block before dying on old Sparky's lap, and he stood 6 feet 8 inches tall. He wasn't all willowy like the TV basketball fellows, though. He was broad in the shoulders and deep through the chest, laced over with muscle in every direction. They'd put him in the biggest denims they could find in the stores, and still the cuffs of the pants rode halfway up on his bunched and scarred calves. The shirt was open to below his chest, and the sleeves stopped somewhere on his forearms. He was holding his cap in one huge hand, which was just as well perched on his bald mahogany ball of a head. It would have looked like the kind of cap an organ grinder monkey wears, only blue instead of red. He looked like he could have snapped the chains that held him as easily as you might snap the ribbons on a Christmas present. But when you looked in his face, you knew he wasn't going to do anything like that. It wasn't dull, although that was what Percy thought. It wasn't long before Percy was calling him idiot, but lost. He kept looking around, as if to make out where he was, maybe even who he was. My first thought is that he almost looked like an African-American Samson, only after Delia had shaved him smooth as her faithless little hand had taken all the fun out of him. Dead man walking, Percy trumpeted, hauling that bear of a man's wrist cuff, as if he really believed he could move him if Coffey decided he didn't want to move anywhere on his own. Harry didn't say anything, but he looked embarrassed, sounded nervous then. Am I gonna have trouble with you, big boy? I asked, sitting here on the bunk, trying not to look or sound miserable as I felt that urinary infection I mentioned earlier wasn't as bad as it eventually got, but it was no day at the beach, let me tell you. Coffee shook his head slowly, once to the left, once to the right, then back to dead center. Once his eyes found me, they never left me. Harry had a clipboard with Coffee's forms on it in one hand. Give it to him, I said to Harry. Put it in his hand. Harry did. The big mutt took it like a sleepwalker. Now bring it to me, big boy, I said, and Coffee did. His chains jingling and rattling. He had to duck his head just to enter the cell. I looked up and down. Mostly to register his height as a fact, and not an optical illusion. It was real, 6 feet 8 inches. His weight was given as 280, but I think it was only an estimate. He had to have been 320, maybe as much as 350 pounds. Under the space for scars and identifying marks, one word had been blocked out in a laborious printing of Magnuson. The old trusty in registration. Numerous. I looked up. Coffee had shuffled a bit to one side, and I could see Harry standing across the corridor in front of Delacroix's cell. He was our only other prisoner in E-Block when Coffee came in. Del was a slight, balding man with a worried face of an accountant who knows his embezzlement will soon be discovered. His tame mouse was sitting on his shoulder. Percy Wetmore was leaning in the doorway of the cell, which had just become John Coffey's. He had taken his hickory baton out of the custom-made holster he carried it in, and was tapping it against one palm the way a man does when he has a toy he wants to use. And all at once, I couldn't stand to have him there. Maybe it was the unseasonable heat. Maybe it was the urinary infection heating up my groin and making the itch of my flannel underwear all but unbearable. Maybe it was knowing that the state had sent me a black man next door to an idiot to execute. And Percy clearly wanted his hand tool him a little first. Probably it was all of those things. Whatever it was, I stopped caring about his political connections for a while. Percy, I said, they're moving house over in the infirmary. Bill Dodge is in charge of that detail. I know he is, I said. Go and help him. That isn't my job, Percy said. This big lagoon is my job. Lagoon was Percy's joke name for the big ones, a combination of lug and goon. He resented the big ones. He wasn't skinny like Harry Twilliger, but he was short. A banty rooster sort of guy. The kind that likes to pick fights, especially when the odds are all their way. And vain about his hair, could hardly keep his hands off of it. Then your job is done. I said, get over to the infirmary. His lower lip pooched out. Bill Dodge and his men were moving boxes and stacks of sheets, even the beds. The whole infirmary was going to a new frame building over on the west side of the prison. Hot work, heavy lifting. Percy met Wetmore, wanted no part of either. They got all the men they need, he said. Get over there and straw boss, I said, raising my voice. I saw Harry wince and paid no attention. If the governor ordered Warden Moores to fire me for ruffling the wrong set of feathers, who was Hal Moores going to put in my place? Percy? It was a joke. I don't really care what you do, Percy, as long as you get out of here for a while. For a moment, I thought he was going to stick and there'd be real trouble with Coffee standing there the whole time, like the world's biggest stopped clock. Then Percy rammed his billy back into its hand-tooled holster. Foolish, damn, vainatorious thing. still and so quiet. In Delacroix's lilting Cajun accent, quiet came out exotic and foreign. Quat. You go lie down, Del, I said curtly. Take you a rest. This ain't none of your business either. He did as I said. He had raped a young girl and killed her, and then dropped her body behind the apartment house where she lived. Doused it with coal oil, and then set it on fire, hoping that some muddled way to dispose of the evidence of his crime. The fire had spread to the building itself and engulfed it, and 6 more people had died, 2 of them children. It was the only crime he had in him, and now he was just a mild-mannered man with a worried face, a bald pate, and a strong, long hair straggling over the back of his shirt collar. He would sit down with old Sparky in a little while, and old Sparky would make an end to him. But whatever, it had been done, that awful thing is already gone. And now he lay on his bunk, letting his little companion run squeaking over his hands. In a way, that was the worst. Old Sparky never burned what was inside them, and the drugs they inject him with today didn't put it to sleep. It vacates, jumps to someone else, and just leaves us to kill husks that aren't really alive anyway. I turned my attention to the giant. If I let Harry take those chains off of you, are you going to be nice? He nodded. It was like his head shake, up, down, back to center. His strange eyes looked at me. There was a kind of peace in them, but not a kind that I was sure I could trust. I crooked a finger to Harry, who came in and unlocked the chains. He showed no fear now, even as he knelt between Coffee's tree-trunk legs to unlock the ankle irons, and that eased me some. It was Percy who had made Harry nervous, and I trust Harry's instincts. I trusted the instincts of all my day-to-day E-Block men, except for Percy. I have a little set speech I make to the men new on the block, but I hesitated with Coffee, because he seemed so abnormal and not just in his size. When Harry stood back, Coffee had remained motionless during the entire unlocking ceremony, as placid as Bertrand. I looked up at my new charge, tapping on the clipboard with my thumb, and said, "Can you talk, big boy?" "Yes, sir, boss. I can talk," he said. His voice was deep and a quiet rumble. He made me think of a freshly tuned tractor engine. He had no real southern drawl. He said "I," not "ah." But there was a kind of southern construction to his speech that I noticed later, as if he was from the South, but not of it. He didn't sound illiterate, but he didn't sound educated. In his speech, as in so many other things, he was a mystery. Mostly it was his eyes that troubled me, a kind of peaceful absence in them, as if he were floating far, far away. "Your name is John Coffey?" "Yes, sir, boss, like the drink, only not spelled the same way. So you can spell, can you? Read and write?" "Just my name, boss," he said serenely. I sighed, then gave him a short version of my set speech. I had already decided he wasn't going to be any trouble. In that, I was both right and wrong. "My name is Paul Edgecombe," I said. "I'm the E-Block super, the head screw. You want something from me, ask for me by name. If I'm not here, ask for this other man. His name is Harry Torliger. Or you used to ask for Mr. Stanton or Mr. Howell. Do you understand that?" Coffee nodded. "Just don't expect to get what you want unless we decide it's what you need. This isn't a hotel. Still with me?" He nodded again. "This is a quiet place, big boy. Not just like the rest of the prison. It's just you and Delacroix over there. You won't work. Mostly you'll just sit. Give you a chance to think things over. Too much time for the most of them, but I didn't say that. Sometimes we play the radio if it's all in order. You like the radio?" He nodded, but doubtfully, as if he wasn't sure what the only had the haziest memory of what they'd been up to the last time. If you behave, you'll eat on time. You'll never see a solitary cell down the far end, or have to wear one of those canvas coats that buttons up the back. You'll have 2 hours in the yard afternoons from 4 to 6, except on Saturdays, when the rest of their prison population has their flag football games. You'll have your visitors on Sunday afternoons if you have someone who wants to come visit you. Do you, Coffee? He shook his head. Got none, boss. He said, well, your lawyer then. I believe I've seen the back end of him, he said. He was given to me on loan. Don't believe he could find his way up here in the mountains. I looked at him closely to see if he might be trying a little joke, but he didn't seem to be. And I really hadn't expected any different. Appeals weren't for the likes of John Coffey. Not back then. They had their day in court, and then the world forgot them until they saw their squib in the paper. Saying a certain fellow might have taken a little electricity along the midnight. But a man with a wife, children, or friends to look forward on a Sunday afternoons was easier to control, if control looked to be a problem. Here it didn't, and that was good, because he was so damn big. I shifted a little on the bunk, then decided I might feel a little bit more comfortable with my nether parts if I stood up, and so I did. He backed away from me respectfully and clasped his hands in front of him. Your time can be easy or hard, big boy. It all depends on you. I'm here to say you might as well make it easy on all of us, because it comes to the same in the end. We'll treat you as right as you deserve. Do you have any questions? Do you leave the light on after bedtime? He asked right away, as if he'd only been waiting for the chance. I blinked at him. I've been asked a lot of strange questions by newcomers to E-Block. Once about the size of my wife's tits, but never that one. I didn't expect that. Coffee was smiling a trifle uneasily, as if he knew we would think him foolish, but couldn't help himself. Because I got a little scared in the dark sometimes, he said, if it's a strange place. I looked at him, the pure size of him, and felt strangely touched. They did touch you, you know. You didn't see them at their worst, hammering out their horrors like demons at a forge. It's pretty bright in here all night long, I said. Half the lights along the mile burn from 9 until 5 every morning. Then I realized he wouldn't have any idea I was talking about. He didn't know the Green Mile from Mississippi mud, so I pointed in the corridor. He nodded, relieved. I'm not sure he knew what a corridor was either, but he could see the 200-watt bulbs in their wire cages. I did something I'd never done to a prisoner before. I offered him my hand. Even now, I don't know why. Him asking about the lights, maybe. It made Harry blink. I can tell you that. Coffee took my hand with surprising gentleness. My hand all but disappeared into his. And that was all of it. I had another muff in my killing bottle. We were done. I stepped out of the cell. Harry pulled the door shut on his track and ran both locks. Coffee stood there for a moment or two longer, as if he didn't know what to do next. Then he sat down on his bunk, clasped his giant hands